Mineral Resources and Energy Department held a conference with the independent power producers bidders last week. The conference follows the release of 3 new requests for proposals for the public procurement of 7,615 megawatt of new generation capacity from various sources of energy. For more on what transpired at that conference, I'm joined by the head of legal at the IPP office, Lena Mangondo. Lena, thanks for making time for us this afternoon. There are always a number of concerns that the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy would have, and concerns that independent power producers would have as well. So what issues were discussed at the conference, and what resolutions did you come to?
Good afternoon, Clement, and thank you, and good afternoon to the viewers. So we, over 2 days last week, we had our bidders conference, as you know, for 3 bid windows. The storage bid window 2, procuring 615 megawatts. We've got the renewable energy IPP procurement program, bid window 7 for 5,000 megawatts, and our first gas program, procuring 2,000 megawatts. So in terms of the key issues or themes that were coming out in that bidders conference was essentially the issue around grid capacity availability. As you will know, we have gone through a procurement process in 2022, at the end of 2022, where we had challenges in relation to grid capacity availability. But where we are now to try and unblock the process and to enable as many bidders as possible to participate is that we said that whereas the requirement in the RFP and previously has been for cost estimate letters that are issued by Eskom, we've allowed those bidders that have budget quotations, which is you have essentially gotten a confirmation of grid capacity availability from Eskom as the grid provider to also submit those budget quotations. As well, under the gas program, we've made that program open and available to bidders who are located anywhere within the borders of South Africa. Specifically for Kocha, for the port of Kocha, we've excluded that from the gas program, and we needed to provide clarity to bidders around that exclusion of Kocha. And it was essentially because the department, during the course of this year, will be launching a separate bid window for 1,000 megawatts of gas-fired power plants that specifically targets Kocha. And that's based on various engagements that we've had with the port and with the SEZ to make available land within the SEZ for projects that wish to be implemented in the SEZ. And that will obviously be open to all participants who would want to participate in the market.
Yeah.
Those are essentially sort of the issues that have come out. The one issue has been around authorizations, regulatory approvals, how bidders could, in the timelines to bid, seek to get those environmental authorizations. But government, through the intervention of the presidency and NECOM, has set up a one-stop shop that seeks to assist developers and bidders in this market to be able to fast-track or facilitate regulatory approvals as an intervention to ensure that we can ultimately improve our security of supply.
Mm-hmm. So I know that, I want you to expand more, please, if you can, on this one-stop shop, because some independent power producers were complaining about all these new rules that investors in energy projects must still meet before they can connect their companies to the grid. So how much of this one-stop shop is going to address that particular concern so that the regulatory approvals are not so long, because then these stringent requirements, as you know, Lena, sometimes are an unreasonable thing that ends up in delaying some of these key projects that are so urgent?
Thank you, Clement. So I think, obviously the country has been talking about some sort of intervention on regulatory approvals and to expedite these regulatory approvals for a number of years, as I indicated. But the one-stop shop was operationalized last year. And through that, on other projects, we've already started to see the traction and support that's being provided not only to participants in the private sector, but even government agencies that struggle with capacity to ensure that ultimately they have the capacity. The officials within the one-stop shop also seek to do is to try and track progress with all of the government agencies in the process of considering approval. So it is more for facilitation. And like I said, we're starting to see the traction. Obviously, the challenge is always that it doesn't remove the requirement or hinder the requirements to ultimately have complied with all of the should I say, submission requirements to get a regulatory approval. But once bidders have, met all of the regulatory requirements in terms of submission of any specialist studies, reports that may be required, then the intervention and support is there. For instance, we've seen some of the environmental approvals. Once participants meet the prescribed requirements in the legislation, typically the timelines for issuance of the environmental authorizations is 56 days versus the 360 days that typically has been the practice.
So they're also complaining that even that process of environmental approvals is quite costly because the developers are expected to meet obviously a number of requirements before they can get the network connection. So from environmental and water usage rights to assigned power purchase agreements and a year's data on available sun and 2 years on available wind. This is what they've also said. And the suggestion that I'm getting from many of them is that that's going to cost investors a lot of money. And they say that they're going to end up so much money before they can have certainty about whether their projects will actually succeed.
I think, Clement, I would say the hallmark of the IPP procurement programs, they've been running over 10 years now. I think, in fact, the first bid window under the renewables was released in 2012. 2011. And the hallmark of the success of that program has been effectively to ensure that projects that are bid into the process are ready projects and demonstrate robustness that indicate readiness and commercial viability. So yes, there is a cost, but ultimately, at the end of the day, is to ensure that we get projects that will be able to succeed and are capable of implementation and ultimately do get to closure. We have had, experiences where we have tried to relax some of those requirements, particularly around the environmental authorizations. And, we've seen that where we've done that, it's actually been quite difficult to close out those projects because the environmental authorization is one of the key authorizations that demonstrates whether a party has a project or not, a feasible project or not. And in the absence of that, it becomes very difficult to say that we've got feasible projects, particularly at a time when the country requires so much power.
And I think we've seen postponements even to the financial close of, I think it was the 5th bid window renewable energy project. So is that still a concern now? Because some of these independent power producers were clearly not ready for financial close. And I wonder if part of the reason for that is the lack of resolution on the local content rules, or has that been resolved?
So where we are now, yes, we had local content designations that were applicable in bid window 5, but I wouldn't say that that was the reason for the delay. Bid window 5, there were a number of issues that led to delays, but from a government perspective, I think the biggest hurdle we had to overcome was actually around getting the budget quotations required for bidders to be able to get indication of the cost and timeline for them to connect to the grid, be it a transmission or a distribution level. So that caused a significant amount of delay. Once those budget quotes had been provided by Eskom, the relevant grid provider, to bidders, then we went through a process to ensure that all projects then signed and were given a period of time to get to financial close. Yes, there were issues, but to get to financial close, but in line with the RFP rules, that is the risk and responsibility of the particular bidder. So I don't. Each bid window, we can't say, well, what happened in bid window 5, or we see that in bid window 7. Each bid window and each project has its own peculiar set of circumstances. And obviously, in the framework of the RFP, we always try and ensure that we actually do get projects that ultimately are able to achieve commercial close within the specified timelines or timelines as notified by the department, because ultimately, we are trying to ensure that we do achieve the security of supply that's urgently required.
Okay. When are we expected to see the 5th and 6th bid window programs come online? When can we expect those projects to come online?
So for bid window 5, a lot of them have started construction activities. So I would say in the coming year, we will start seeing some of those going into commissioning and early operation, and next year as well, towards the end of 2024 and into 2025, we'll start seeing those projects coming online. For the 6th bid window, for the 6th bid window, where we currently are is that most of those projects are currently finalizing their commercial arrangements with lenders, with suppliers, contractors, and shareholding arrangements as shareholders. And we anticipate that as they get their budget quotes, which is a key milestone, as I indicated, as they get their budget quotes from Eskom, then we'll start closing those, so commercial close. So after commercial close, depending on the timelines that they've been given under their budget quote, they will then start coming online. But in accordance with the RFP, the requirement was for them to come online within a period of 24 months from commercial close. But again, it's dependent on what the budget quotation says about the connection timelines.
All right. Thank you so much for making time for us. The head of legal at the IPP office, Lena Mangondo.